Welcome everyone. This is the first session of our inaugural UBE course hosted by myself and the one and only Matt Beckerman. And I thought there's no better way to start than a quick introduction. So Matt, why don't you tell the people a little bit about yourself and what qualifies you to teach the UBE exam?
So I took the UBE back in July of 2022, which I guess almost a year ago now. I scored a 339 on the exam with 167 on the MBE. And, I felt that, I've always been a good test taker, and I thought I'd want to help other people also pass this test because it's really just an awful test and it just keeps people from doing their lives and just being being in the profession that they want to be in. So I thought I'd help out.
Awesome, man. Matt is a great guy, a great asset. And I put him to best use by having him create a questionnaire that asks all the fundamental questions for really understanding things that are tested on the UBE or the MBE, in particular, federal con law. So we're going to start off. It'll be a fun exercise with the entire team with going through this questionnaire together. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen, and don't worry, we'll give everyone access to everything. You'll have a good folder, but we're just going to start off class low key. What's the definition of a contract and what are its key requirements? Anyone want to take a stab at this?
I'll try.
Go ahead.
A contract is between two people. You need offer, acceptance, consideration, and you can't have any valid defenses.
Okay.
It had both. It has to be stated. The parties got to know it's been stated, and it can be a writing, though it doesn't have to be. And that's all I remember.
Okay. Fair enough. Well, these questions kind of repeat themselves in a little bit of a manner. So what type of contracts fall under the UCC versus the common law? Well, I still have you on the hook with your shirt on, Serge. What contracts we got for UCC?
UCC controls all tangible movable objects, and it deals with sales.
Okay.
Common law deals with everything else.
And what are the main things we think of when we think of everything else?
Common law in terms of if there is I tell you, look, if you do this, I'll pay you that.
Sure, we'll call it a service maybe, or land. Land or services are two of the big ones that I think of that fall under the common law. The definition of a good. So for good, I think I already said it, all things movable. I've wondered this. What's a good definition of a service?
Oh, that's a good one.
How about you, Matt? I think this could be one of your favorite words.
That's a good question, actually. I would say a service is any kind of performance rendered, I guess in this context, for payment, but not necessarily. So any just kind of a performance, it's not an object.
Yeah, any kind of performance rendered. Fair enough. Tutoring, service, book, goods. Okay. What is the predominant purpose test? Why don't we move on to someone else if someone doesn't mind? Lexi, you mind helping me with the predominant purpose test?
Sure. The predominant purpose test is determining what rule of law governs a contract when both goods and services are involved, and it's whatever the main purpose of the contract is.
And we're going to go with the main purpose. So if it's split between UCC goods and services, let's say tutoring contract is perfect, but we also supply you with some materials, the main purpose is probably the tutoring, which is a service. So it'd probably be under the common law. We could potentially argue for divisibility of contract. Let's say if the price terms and the service terms were different, and then you could say, well, maybe the books were UCC and the tutoring was services, and we could split up the contract. But that's, atypical. I think normally we would apply the predominant purpose test and one body of law will govern. Okay, offer, acceptance. Let's start with them. Offer, what is an offer? You want to stick with it, Lexi?
Sure. An offer is a manifestation of present intent to contract.
Okay, anything important about offers that we want to put on this bullet number 5? Not-
Probably the mirror image rule, something, no. We
Yeah,
go,
we're-
it like goes in it later on.
Yeah, we're gonna go into all this later on. That's just, what is an offer?
Yeah,
Members-
most of these these are basic and then it gets like more in depth later.
Nice, keep it very simple. So what about acceptance?
An objective manifestation to be bound by the terms in the offer.
Objective manifestation. Cool. Ooh, the mailbox rule. Who feels confident out there in teaching me about the mailbox rule? If you ever watch Keeping Up with the Kardashians, Kim Kardashian could not understand the mailbox rule for the life of her. Hopefully by now she does.
I'm gonna take a stab at it.
Okay.
Mailbox rule, it involves when you have an offer, but acceptance and acceptance and counter offers are going back and forth and back and forth. So if there is an offer by me to you, and all of a sudden I decide, you know what, I don't want to deal with you. You've already sent your acceptance. By the time you put that in the postal service, it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
It's already there. We
The
are bound.
offer is effective upon receipt. You have to have knowledge of the offer, clearly, but the acceptance will actually be effective right upon dispatch, once you put it in the mailbox. There's some intricacies of the mailbox rule. Can anyone explain them for me? Matt, you seem like you got it.
I mean, I can think of one that people kind of overlook. So if you send out a rejection letter and then you change your mind and then you send out an acceptance letter, and I feel like this has never happened ever in real life. They do like to test on this.
But on the bar exam, it happens 3 times.
Yeah, it happens at least like once a exam session. Like if you send an acceptance letter after a rejection letter, if the acceptance letter gets there first, then that constitutes an acceptance.
Yeah, whatever arrives first.
And this is complete nonsense, but they will test on it.
Yeah. That's what I try and tell people. The bar exam is not real life. This is a game. We're just playing a game. We're trying to get good at it. It's like chess or
Yeah, I mean, it's basically the LSAT
the LSAT. Yeah, which if
game section.
you know anyone who needs to get better at the LSAT, we have some fine LSAT tutors in our department.
Quick
Okay.
question about the mailbox rule. Isn't there a rule that says that if, I guess they're both sent out at the same time or something, whichever one's relied upon first?
I mean, like, I guess I've never seen it where like you send out the acceptance and rejection at the same time. Maybe that could be a different rule.
Maybe, but I thought I've seen one where, or I've seen at least a rule where, the end result is that it's whichever one's relied upon. I'm not sure if it was the acceptance and the acceptance was sent, then a rejection, or if it was a rejection, then an acceptance.
Okay.
But I
You know
thought there
where
was
you
one
saw
where,
Yeah, Gabby, let's table that. So
oh,
there's something
okay,
about
okay.
the rule with reliance, and I don't want to put anything on my sheet that isn't confirmed. So if anyone can confirm it, put it in the chat and I'll put it on my sheet. All right. What is consideration, Gabby, while I have you on the phone? The phone. What's consideration?
Consideration. I can't think of a definition.
For exchange of legal
Is that
detriment.
bargain for exchange? Yes.
Yes, a bargain for exchange of legal detriment of value, right? Ooh, this is a good question. And Matt, I might need to put you on the microphone for this one, because this is tough. What does nominal consideration mean, moral consideration, and how might the pre-existing duty rule tie in there? I guess I could explain it, but if you want to, Matt, seems tough.
I mean, do any of you want to take a stab at it?
You know what? I'll try it again.
All right.
Nominal considerations, like I'll give you $1.
Right. Like,
Moral consideration is, I saved your life. Can you do this for me? Or, you owe me one for what I did. Pre-existing legal duty is your legal obligation to certain things that you've already agreed to do. And in order for you to receive further compensation, there must be a new type of agreement. You just can't keep going.
or
Yeah, so pre-existing duty can be both something you've already contracted to do or something that you're just legally obligated to do. So like there is that one contract case where
Can you slow down so I can write exactly what you're saying right now? Pre-existing duty rule can be what?
it can be something that you've already contracted to do. Like, oh, like I contracted to mow your lawn. If you already promised me $800, not that's a lot, $800, but could you also give me, could you let me keep the lawnmower afterwards? That would be, you can't, you're not bargaining anything because you're already contracted to mow the lawn. And then you had that contract case where the uncle said to his nephew, like, if you don't smoke and drink until you're of age, I will give you $5,000. And that wasn't enforceable because legally he's not supposed to do those things anyway.
Okay, excellent. So
Oh.
now,
Can I add a question about that one, about the pre-existing duty rule? And I think Matt hit it, but I was just confused because I thought pre-existing, if you already had a pre-existing duty to do it, then there would be no new consideration because you already had a pre-existing duty to do it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, okay, then so it says must be consideration for if there's a new agreement, like a whole separate contractual agreement. That's
Yeah,
what you're saying for number, okay, that was confusing the way it was written. I got you now.
yeah, I
Yeah,
meant,
pre-existing duties, I meant to write that as like, that's a separate thing entirely, not that it's part of those two things. So
it ties in together because moral consideration ties into the pre-existing duty rule because it's like, because I saved your life, you have to do this. It's like, no, I already saved your life. The pre-existing duty rule is the same thing where because you already did something doesn't mean that this new contract is or this new modification is okay. We have to have new consideration for new agreements. Oh, we have someone new in the room. Cool.
So Gabby, I'm seeing what you sent. So that would be when it's acceptance, then rejection, but rejection is received. That would lead to a promissory estoppel issue. So I guess that technically like comes from the mailbox rule, but like I guess I wouldn't really consider that a mailbox rule thing. That just becomes promissory estoppel.
Let me just read to the room what Gabrielle had put. So we'll go
That
back to
makes
the
sense.
when the offeree sends an acceptance followed by a rejection, in which case a contract is formed upon dispatch of the acceptance, regardless of which communication is received first. However, the offeree may be stopped from enforcing the contract if the offerer received the rejection first and detrimentally relied on it. Perfect. That's just saying that detrimental reliance could potentially trump even a mailbox rule sequence because detrimental reliance is very powerful in contract law. If you rely on something and you go out and buy, $100 million worth of steel, well, then that's bigger than which one came in the mail first. So let's leave it at that. But so far, so good. How about number 10? How can an offer be revoked, and how can a third party revoke an offer? An offer may be revoked how?
It can be revoked by a clear enunciation of one's performance or promise to perform.
So basically at any time, right?
Right.
At any time before acceptance, unless it was an option contract.
Right. It's clear renunciation, like renouncing it.
How can a third party revoke an offer?
But wouldn't this be like this that would be post contract if you're renouncing your promise to perform? An offer is revoked when the offeror takes it back before it's accepted.
Yeah, so
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
let's make it clear. At any time before acceptance, right? Is that a better answer, Matt? An offer can be revoked at any time before acceptance unless it was an option contract, and you can revoke it by any means, like I revoke my offer. Now,
Yeah, or like I'll sell you my motorcycle, then the motorcycle is destroyed.
right. Okay, that's another one. So destruction of subject matter.
And sometimes death of the offeror, but not always, or death of the offeree, the acceptor, yes, because then they can't accept.
Okay.
Offeror says, you have 24 hours to accept the sale of my motorcycle, and then he dies. The person can still accept it, and it would just be like the man's family selling the motorcycle. So in that case, death would not revoke the offer.
So I like death. And then what about the situation where the person who has yet to accept receives notice that someone else has accepted? Would that revoke the offer?
Yeah, if it's an open offer, if it's like an exclusive offer, then that's touchy. But if it's like a sale of a motorcycle, like, oh, like anyone wants to buy my motorcycle, and I'm just like sticking with motorcycles because it's easy, for $12,000, which might be too much for a motorcycle, can buy it, and then you see someone else driving the motorcycle outside, like out of that person's driveway, it's pretty clear that that third party then bought the motorcycle and it's no longer for sale. Or if I
Exactly.
hear it on the grapevine or from
That's what I meant right there. If you hear on the grapevine or you see someone else driving the motorcycle, then the offer has been revoked almost implicitly by your knowledge of someone else accepting the offer. So far we're doing pretty good. These are basics. Definition of a contract, UCC goods, common law is everything else, land and services. Goods are all things movable, services performance, predominant purpose, which predominates, offers manifestation of present intent to contract, acceptance, a sense of the terms. The mailbox rule, remember, offer is effective upon receipt. You have notice of the offer, but acceptance is effective upon dispatch. Consideration, Gabby, we'll never forget, a bargain for exchange of legal detriment or value. And then we talked about this pre-existing moral, pre-existing duty, moral consideration, nominal consideration. These are things that don't qualify as true consideration because you already had the duty to do it. There has to be true consideration. You have to be required, obligated to do something that you weren't legally obligated to do otherwise. And then we talked about revocation, and good methods of revocation are, I revoke, sorry, that this offer no longer stands, or destruction of the subject matter, death, or potentially notice that someone else has accepted. And we just talked about that. All right, let's get some more participation. Chelsea, are you with us? How about?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I was on mute.
It's okay. Do you know what the difference between a unilateral and a bilateral contract is?
Well, yes, with a unilateral contract, it's what the offerer putting out an offer for the offeree to do, and the offeree can accept by completing the performance.
I like that. Accepted by performance. And remember we talked about, once you begin performance, the offers are revocable. Once you complete performance, you've accepted the offer. I might have twisted that up. Yeah, I might have twisted that up a little bit for my MBE class. I'll make sure to clarify it tomorrow, but that's the fact with the unilateral contract.
Yeah, by the performance being completed, right?
Completion of performance is acceptance. But once you started, you stood in the line, then it's irrevocable. Start of performance makes offer irrevocable. All right, and then what about a bilateral contract? That's basically everything else, right? Offer.
Yeah, two-party, yeah.
Go ahead, two parties.
That's like a normal.
And you can put like the promise to, yeah, promise to perform, promise for a promise, or promise to perform, and what's the other?
Promise for a promise.
Or promise, those three things.
I do you a favor, you do me a favor. Okay, great.
Yeah.
What about implied in fact and implied in law? Ooh, this is deep in the trenches. I know Matt and I can explain. We talked about this yesterday, 2 days ago. Go ahead, you want to do it? Implied in fact versus implied in law? Go ahead, Chelsea.
Yeah, implied in fact is when the contract is implied by the facts of law, by conduct or different obligations from the person. You look at the facts of the contract, and then implied in law is when it's a legal cognizable to perform. Yeah, legal. Okay, yeah, this is kind of confusing to explain. A legal cognizable to perform the obligations of the contract. I know more by the examples, like the one if you're unconscious and they and the doctor resuscitates you while you're out, then that would be more in implied in law.
Yeah,
Okay.
implied in law like that relates to unjust enrichment.
Exactly. Relates to unjust enrichment or quasi.
Right.
And then you have implied in fact where you go to a pizza place, like you point to a piece of cheese pizza, then you hand them, $2. Like that's an implied in fact contract. Like that could be without words.
I like that. Pointing to cheese pizza. Implied in fact. When does an advertisement constitute an offer? Let's see. Anyone else want to participate?
Sure. So I think when it contains clear and definitive terms for acceptance.
The terms for acceptance, exactly.
And as I would imagine, like also like an offeree knows, reasonably knows that it would be an offer as well.
That's fine. So if it's really specific, highly specific, come to Dayland Mall at 3 p.m., $50, and you can get this blue Honda. And it's 1942, I guess. All right. This is a great question. And I only want someone to answer it if they feel like they're going to make me satisfied with all of the special rules, or at least a decent amount of them.
Some of them are in later questions, so I guess you don't have to answer all of them.
All right. Well, then why don't you tell us which answers you believe go here?
The special rules, I guess, I don't even know when I was writing this, I just kind of wanted people to list them out, and then later you'd explain them in the other
Okay,
questions.
yeah, I can list out
Like special rules, like a battle of the forms,
Mhm.
The firm offer, really like most things or everything to do is like UCC. This was more of just like an open-ended question.
Modification. I know, but I like open-ended questions. I'm the king of open-ended questions. All right. Battle of the forms provision, firm offer, no consideration necessary for modification. I would say the 30-day request for further assurances.
And then a bunch of other stuff in the UCC that like they're not going to test you on because it's too niche.
Yeah. Anything else between merchants that we could think of? I feel like there's one more we talked about earlier this morning that's escaping me.
Oh, what about the risk of loss rule?
Yeah, I guess. Maybe this will come back to me, but the battle of forms provision is the biggest one. Basically, like that an additional term will be part of the contract unless it materially alters. The firm offer, which will have up to 90 days, irrevocable.
Yeah, as long as it's written and signed by the merchant.
No
To-
consideration necessary for modification. Just needs to be in good faith.
And no consideration for the firm offer, though I guess that's later down, but we can just repeat it.
Yeah, and then
Different than the
A written confirmatory memo was the other one
But
from this
thank
one.
you. I was literally stalling for a reason. I knew if we stalled long enough, it would come to me. The written confirmatory memo rule. Confirmatory memo rule. I just remember there was 5. I don't know.
right, and that's like an exception to the not an exception, but like a defense to a statute of frauds.
Yeah, we can call it an exception. It's fair to use that language. So battle the forms, firm offer, no consideration necessary for modification, 30-day written request for further assurances, and the written confirmatory memo. Someone had a question? Sorry.
Yeah, I have a quick question. Would this just be firm offer, but no consideration necessary for an option? Would
Yeah,
more of a firm offer?
they're kind of intertwined, right?
Okay,
So a merchant can do both, but a non-merchant cannot do firm offers only. But yes, firm offers don't need consideration, but
Exactly.
like options do need consideration, but that can be longer than 90 days.
Right. To hold it.
So if you want, I would think of this like maybe make like a T chart or like a table or something to say like a firm offer is this and options that.
We're gonna
You're
keep
shaking
it.
your head.
We're gonna keep it.
I don't mean on that. I don't mean on this. I just mean like later on. I don't know how to make it
for
work on
sure.
here.
oh,
But I
sorry,
appreciate it.
so just to clarify, so then, wait, so between merchants, there's no consideration for an option?
Exactly. There's no consideration necessary between merchants for an option contract.
Okay.
Non-merchants there is. So that does get to go here. No consideration to hold open. So good stuff. 14. The mirror image rule and the ballot form. So the mirror image rule applies when?
Common law contracts where all the contracts have got to mirror the terms of the offer must mirror before acceptance. If not, it can be a rejection or a counteroffer.
Yeah, also in the UCC between two non-merchants.
What'd you say, Matt?
Oh, it also applies to UCC between two non-merchants. We should also define merchant, which could help, which is like someone who like especially sells that good, not like someone who sells it at a garage sale, like someone like whose job is selling this good and like understands and is an expert.
Not Mr. V.
Yeah. All right. Also, we should define merchants, someone who engages in the business activity right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're a merchant. I think we know what merchants are. I was just being funny and taking my job too seriously. Okay. What is the perfect tender rule and when does it apply? Anyone out there want to do the perfect tender rule for me?
I'll take a stab at it again, y'all.
Okay.
I'd rather be wrong here than wrong on exam day.
Yeah.
Perfect tender is a UCC doctrine where all goods must we must tender all goods. They must be in the form and fashion in which we agreed upon. If not, we must give them time to we must give them time to remedy. And there are a whole bunch of rules with that too.
Yeah, we'll slow it down. Perfect tender just means there has to be perfect delivery. Anything else is not a non-conforming. Any non-conforming delivery is a breach, right? And then they have certain remedies. Sure, maybe they can accept it and sue for damages. Maybe they can reject it, but you breached. If I ordered 500 red apples and you ship me 499 red apples or 500 green apples or anything that's different, then that is a non-perfect tender. So kind of scale back and remember, common law is mirror image where the offer has to match the acceptance exactly. The UCC is going to be battle of the forms where we could have an additional term, and as long as it's not material, it will be included in the contract. So when it comes to the offer and the acceptance, the mirror image is common law and it has to be exact. So under the common law, we have to have the exact offer and acceptance. Under the UCC, we have a little bit of leeway in terms of the acceptance can be a little bit differently. But then the UCC gets more strict when it comes to the actual delivery. When it comes to the actual delivery, we need to have a perfect tender. When we're working with the common law, we just need to have substantial performance. So you see, again, kind of a T-chart. Under the common law, it's mirror image, substantial performance. Under the UCC, it's battle of the forms, perfect tender. Everyone's in alignment with that? Right, exactly. Matt did the job for me. Battle of the forms, new terms can be included so long as they don't materially alter the contract, right? And if they do materially alter the contract, then they'll be knocked out, right?
Yeah.
Or exactly, the knockout rule. Yeah, thank you, Matt. I appreciate you. Look, 2 typers are better than 1. Knockout rule. I was telling everyone to think about the fight tonight. Haney versus Lomachenko and Muhammad Ali's grandson is fighting. Knockout rule is when there's conflicting terms or terms that materially alter, they'll be knocked out. And the reason, as I was explaining to my class, is amongst merchants, we want to have more fluidity of transaction. We don't want to be, whoa, there was a little deviation, therefore we need to stop the whole show. Like, no, those widgets need to go to Russia. Those widgets need to go to India right now. Like, we need to get the ship sailing. So we're going to have a little more leeway. But then we do want to have perfect tender because these are merchants and we want to make sure you're sticking up to your word and you're delivering exactly as you said you would. Okay, this is one that I think is tough. I think a lot of people, you go to law school and you can't answer this question. Can anyone explain what promissory estoppel means?
I can try. It's where one materially changes their position in reliance on a promise of which the promisor would reasonably foresee. And in order to avoid an injustice, the promise must be enforced.
Yeah, exactly.
It was foreseeable.
Like those are the 3 main things.
Suffered injustice. Yeah, those are the 3 things. We're all in alignment, perfect harmony. Beautiful. Promissory estoppel is one of these equitable remedies or defenses where it's like, maybe there wasn't a perfect contract, but come on, we relied on it. It was foreseeable we were going to rely on it, and we suffered injustice. Therefore, you are stopped from denying the contract existing. You might hear about it when we do corporations, like a corporation by estoppel. You're stopped from denying the status of that corporation. Here, you're stopped from denying that there was a meeting of the minds. Good job, Brandon. That was impressive. All right, what is the statute of frauds and why is it important in contracts law? This is an easier question if anyone wants to take this one up. There are certain contracts that must be in writing and signed by the party to be charged. Why is it important?
They're 2 mnemonics, but I think my legs is better than slide gems.
I've never heard slide gems in my life. I would never hear
Well,
that.
that's why I think my legs is better.
Yeah, we're taking that out. We can't, my brain can't handle that. All right. I have too much love for my legs. There are certain types of contracts that must be in writing and signed, must be in writing and signed by the party to be charged. Okay, and don't you dare tell me about this mistress. I'm going with my legs. That's the thing. Like, did you ever go to law school? Tell me what my legs moves. I used to get people, and I will get all of you later.
So
Amendment
I
six.
think what marriage, land, sale in excess of $500 or goods in excess of $500. Surety is the last one. In excess of a year before
Would you
the
like to
complete
get someone for
performance.
$500, Brian?
What, why?
No, I was trying to do the Wheel of Fortune. Um,
Oh,
Contracts of agreement within a year and executorships.
Yeah,
um,
executorships don't often come up on the exam, but important to know.
You're right, but everyone knows what executorship is, right? It's like, you know, when someone's making decisions for you, either because you're incapacitated or you're on your deathbed or you're dead, you know,
Britney Spears
yeah, exactly.
is an example.
1 year. All right, how do you overcome when, and I'm sorry, Matt, I'm not letting you do these words. I know these ones. I like swap. Some people use SCAP, I think. SCAP, because
Okay, this is new to me, so I'm gonna have to.
oh, this is new to you? All right, cool.
Yeah.
I would go with specially manufactured goods. Manufactured. Written.
Like jerseys for your intramural softball league would be an example. Because that's not something that's just being sold in general. Like that's obviously made for a specific purpose.
Can you tell me what your example was again? I didn't hear it.
Oh, like if you're getting jerseys designed for your intramural
Yeah.
softball league.
Right, the Ibis Prep jerseys. Yeah, that's a good idea. We should have an Ibis Prep softball team. Think we'd be any good? I think we got some hitters on my staff. All right. Yeah, if we got Ibis Prep specially manufactured jerseys, that would have to conform. That would overcome a statute of frauds, meaning even though it wasn't in writing, look for that. They were specially made widgets. Barbara, we got you. If you want a shirt, I got you. Don't worry. Appreciate that. Lexi got you too. Don't worry. Okay, so how do you overcome a statute of frauds defense? Overcoming means it was oral. I admit it. It was supposed to be in writing, but you know what? It was specially manufactured. Those Ibis Prep, like, come on, you're trying to deny the legitimacy of this contract because it was over the phone, but it was for Ibis Prep polo shirt, so like it had to be legitimate. That's kind of why we'll overcome that. Same thing with the written confirmatory memo. If two merchants are talking and they say, hey, send me 500 tomatoes, okay, got it. And then one of the merchants sends to the other, hey, Tommy, this is to confirm our discussion, and then it has the essential terms. Like, remember, price is not an essential term. It doesn't need to have the price, but if it has the quantity and the tomatoes and such, we can overcome it. Admission in court, yeah, it's very reliable if you say something in court. Promissory estoppel, we just talked about earlier, like, yes, we can overcome statute of frauds if we relied and it was foreseeable and it was reasonable and we suffered harm. And then partial performance, like, oh, you're saying now that it wasn't in writing? Like, come on, we already started doing the thing. Like, it's a little bit late for that. Okay, what about the difference between a mutual mistake and a unilateral mistake? What's up, kitty cat? Yeah, that's your cat, Lexi?
Yeah, I have 4 cats and 2 dogs, so they might appear.
You're a zookeeper.
Yeah,
Did we talk about partial performance?
Sorry, we were talking about cats. What were you saying, Matt?
Oh, did we go over partial performance?
Yeah, what would you say about partial performance?
Like if it's a sale of land and you know you have a receipt in your bank of $1 million from the person that you're saying you never sold land to, you know, it's pretty damning.
Yeah,
Like arguing in court that there's no contract when this guy just gave you $1 million and said like, oh, land.
sure. Right, partial performance in a land contract for the sale of land. It's supposed to be in writing. It wasn't in writing, but we already transferred the money and, you know, built the fence or whatever. Okay. Lexi, the zookeeper. Don't worry, I love animals. That's not an insult. I want to be a zoo. I would love to be a zookeeper. Not really. I don't think anyone should be in the zoo, but I would love to be amongst the animals. What is the difference between mutual mistake and unilateral mistake?
So mutual mistake, both parties are wrong about a term in the contract, and then it makes the contract void. But unilateral mistake, it is, one party is mistaken about something, and it's normally enforced unless that the non-mistaken party is, doing anything like did it maliciously, or I'm trying to think of the other thing. There's like one other portion of that.
They had reason to know something was afoot.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
we knew something was afoot. I like that. And
Yeah, like if someone is trying to buy a horse from an expert horse dealer, and the horse dealer knows that this horse, does not have good legs and like will never race, and the person says, "Oh, I'm excited, so excited to get this horse and train him for all the races and be so rich," and the guy's like, "Oh, that's great."
yeah,
That
I
would
was
be
gonna say-
example where you can rescind it for mutual mistake.
you clearly do practice MBE questions, because that horse trainer one with the son and the trainer, and it's tested like 3 different ways. The one time is because the trainer knew that the horse ran super fast before the race and didn't tell the son. Well, that was a unilateral mistake, right? Because the kid didn't know how fast the horse was, but the trainer essentially took advantage of him because he knew how fast the horse was and he hid it from him. So I always say it's about contracts. One of the beautiful things about contracts is governed by good faith. If it's in good faith, it's pretty good. If it's in bad faith, you're not going to succeed. We're never going to reward the fraudster or the trickster or the who acted in bad faith. All right, here are good things. What is the difference between duress and undue influence?
For us, there's actually a threat.
Yeah, duress is a threat. And what's undue influence?
That's just something that's like so. Crap, what's that one? There's like an actual definition for it. I can't think of it.
I know they always state the like superior inferior relationship, like a teacher student relationship or something like that.
When I think of is the funeral, like you come to me at my funeral and say, hey, you gotta do this, sell your Toyota right now, or else your dad's not gonna be buried properly. You know what I mean? Something like that. Like that would be undue influence. Like you kind of did it at a bad time. Threat is like, I'm gonna do this to you, or I'm not gonna let you do this if you don't acquiesce. All right, what is incapacity? What are different things that could render a person incapable? I mean, whiskey, rum, gin, vodka. Fentanyl, I think, is the big one amongst the kids these days. No, I pray it's not. Okay. Incapacity. So intoxication.
Yeah.
What else?
Minor
Yeah, if you're a minor, maybe you're infancy, what do you call it?
and mental disability or infirmary.
Mental disability or infirmity. Spelling you champ. Okay. Yeah, those are good things, right? You're incapacitated. Anyone else?
I think
Anyone?
those are the main three.
What's up?
I think those are the main three.
Yeah, is anyone incapacitated?
Intoxication, the other person has to know that you're, and same with mental disability. Like if you're on the phone with someone and you're schizophrenic and can't, you don't really know what you're buying, and the other person has no way of knowing,
Right.
then it's not void.
They can't void it. They can't void it if they didn't know you were intoxicated and there's no evidence that they were intoxicated, and now you're being like, we find out later they were intoxicated. Well, you had no excuse, you entered into a
Yeah.
contract. All right, I don't know.
Being a minor, like if you're under 18 and you're making a contract, then it's always voidable by you, unless it's for something like necessary, like food or like clothing.
Right.
And then once you turn 18, you have like a reasonable amount of time within to void the contract. So it's not right when you turn 18, like all contracts are okay.
Can ratify upon 18, right? They can ratify the
Within a
contract.
reasonable amount of time.
I see that question. Like we made an agreement for $70 at 17. Kid turns 18 and says, I'll buy it for 65. Well, now you've ratified it for 65. The actual agreement will be for the ratification price, not the original price that you agreed to when it was voidable. All right, 2 types of unconscionability. Let's play a game. I will give you the 2 types and you guys have to define them. Right, procedural and substantive. Oh man, I hate misspelling things. Substantive. Okay, what's procedural mean? Or what's substantive mean? Did I get them right at least, Matt?
Yes.
Okay, let me-
So in some states, you need both. In some, you don't need both. You just need at least one, like pretty strongly. They'd have to tell you like whether you need both or not.
So what do they mean? I would say procedural, well, substantive would be like oppressive terms, right? Like the actual, like it's $1 million, you know, and procedural might
Yeah.
be like
The context behind it, like, oh, like one party was
context.
18, no high school degree. The other party was a big corporation. They pressured them with like these terms. They didn't let them talk to anyone about it. Said like, oh, you have 5 minutes to sign this, or we're walking.
Right.
They put it
Again,
behind like very confusing language, like, oh, this is like,
procedural unconscionability and undue influence sound similar in a lot of ways, right? Because it's like undue, and then procedural is like a context that makes it so that it's not fair. Unconscionability kind of means unfairness. Yeah, procedural is more like a power dynamic. I get that. Right, it's more like a power dynamic. And substantive is more of oppressive terms. Like no one would buy a freaking ginger ale for $1 million. That's, you know, substantively unconscionable. Procedural is like in the terms of this ginger ale on page 447, it said some crazy thing that, you know, no one should have agreed to. So those are tough. Let's move forward though.
or like, yeah. So, but if you have like procedural unconscionability, but the terms are fair, that might still be fine, and vice versa. Like if the terms are like so ridiculous, but the procedure is fair, like both
Signed it. You knew what you were
like
signing.
lawyers, like they talk to people beforehand, like then that might still be fine.
I love that. And, you know, great thing about working with Matt is we really dig deep into the details. And that's a good point. Like there's a conversation, you need both of them. You know, just because something, you know, is $1 million for ginger ale, well, if I signed this and my lawyer was there and signed it, like there's kind of a good argument that I should still be held to it. So we're just thinking here. All right. What's the difference between void and voidable? And is the difference meaningful? Difference is definitely meaningful, right? Void means cannot be performance is
Isn't it like illegal right from the inception of the contract?
the contract cannot be performed.
Okay,
Say that. And voidable means one party can elect to not perform the contract,
Yeah.
like a child. Is it significant? Yeah, meaningful, very meaningful. What are the intentional and negligent misrepresentations? Also misrepresentation by omission.
Intentional is actually called fraudulent, but like same thing.
Yeah, fraudulent misrepresentation is like intentional,
Yeah, or like grossly reckless.
is negligent, obviously. And then omission is you don't say something that you're
Yeah, like if like you're selling a house and there are like owls living in the attic and it's during the day, so they're asleep. And the person doesn't go into the attic when they're touring the house. Like you don't say, oh, don't worry, there are no owls in my house. But that is something that you should be telling a prospective buyer, that my house is full of owls.
yeah.
But it has to be about like all 3 of them have to be about something material.
I almost made an owl joke, but I didn't know if you're gonna get the punchline or not. So I just
Did you?
is being against public policy the same as being illegal? What's the difference? I'm gonna go with no. Against public policy means it's legal, but we don't enforce then illegal means it's a violation of the law. It's a violation of the law, right? So,
Yeah.
give us. I could give an example, but you could give an example too if you want, Matt.
Oh, I was gonna ask if people had any examples.
What's an example of something that's
policy.
against public policy? Go ahead.
Me? Oh, I was asking if people had any.
Like a contract that's illegal is Matt and I agree to sell drugs. I'll meet you at Grand and Douglas with a big bag of drugs, right? That's
Yeah.
illegal.
And then
Right.
like I say, oh no, I'm not gonna do that. And then you take me to court saying you promised to sell me these drugs. We contracted, the court will say, I don't care. We're
Yeah,
not enforcing this.
that's illegal.
That's happened before, not between us, but
All right, and then what's the example against public policy? Like,
Like if you get,
maybe
let's say-
uninsured. Good.
I was saying, let's say I bought a car from you and all of a sudden the car doesn't work, I return it, you say, I say, I want my money back. And you all of a sudden you're like, no. So the court, if the court finds that the car was jacked up and I had to return it, they're not going to allow you to benefit twice. You can't get my money and resell the car.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I would think of against public policy, meaning like contracts that are just, we don't enforce these, like contracts of adhesion or contracts that are illusory or contracts that, just require people to do things that we as a society just don't enforce. They're unenforceable. Or contracts that explicate all liability, right? That's an example of a contract against public policy. If Matt and I have a contract where, he's going to work for me and I take no liability if anything ever goes wrong, that's probably against public policy, because even though it would be legal, there's nothing illegal about it. We just don't allow for there to be contracts that totally relieve people from liability or something of that nature.
Yeah.
It's about. All right. The difference. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, I think there's an MBE question I've done that's about with public policy about like a homeowner's like a homeowner's insurance. And what's that?
No, I was going to talk about that one, but go ahead if you could
Oh,
talk.
okay. No, go for it.
So that one is, so there's a homeowner policy and there's an insurance company, right? And basically the state creates a statute that says that these types of policies are unenforceable. We're not going to allow these types of policies to be enforced, right? And then me, the homeowner, I go to seek recovery because I get damaged. And then the insurance company says, hey, we're not going to honor this policy because the state said that it's unenforceable. Well, that's kind of messed up if you think about it, because the insurance company who created the contract with you is now trying to take shelter in the unenforceability of it against you, who's trying to recover as a protected class. So that's what that, I think, was that the question you're talking about, Barbara?
Yeah, and I think the answer talked about how, that protected class, it's the public policy meaning is that we're trying to protect, the population at large and by enforcing it.
Right. That's what public policy really means. Things that seem to go against law, but they're to protect the people at large. And that's one example, is we're not going to let the insurance company take shelter in a ruling that is used against the people that are protected by the ruling, right? The ruling was to protect the people who had the insurance policy, and now the insurance company is not honoring the policy because their policy violates the rule. Again, a web of one single question, but at least we know what public policy means. It's like when something is just not good for everybody. Barbara, while I have you on the line, what's the difference between material and immaterial breach?
A material breach would be a breach that substantially alters the terms of the contract. And immaterial would be, I guess, that alters the terms of the contract in a way that doesn't substantially change the agreement between the parties.
Right, a material breach usually leads to a major form of relief, like rescission of the contract or reformation or expectation damages. Or an immaterial breach is probably something smaller, and it's not going to lead to one party not having to perform. Right, the other party still has to perform because the other party just immaterially breached. So, what is a divisible performance, and when does it apply? So
this is separate than what we were talking about before with dividing like goods and services in a contract. Like this is dividing even between services.
So, for example, painting 3 different houses,
Yeah. But I guess all owned by the same person.
or fixing 2 different bathrooms. Now, remember to differentiate this from a construction project where you do the floor, the windows, the roof, all that is part of the same project.
So it is so divisible contracts, it's construction contracts and installment contracts are all 3 different things.
Yeah, so in construction contracts, you can still get like, oh, like you finished the foundation, we'll give you an advance payment. That's technically not a divisible contract, and I don't know why that is the case, but they do like
Okay.
us on that.
Okay.
Divisible contract means services can be separated and paid for separately. It
Yeah,
really comes to a breach. Like if you breach a divisible contract, then you could, I am supposed to fix 2 bathrooms in the house. I fix one and then I piece. Well, I should still get paid for doing the first one because we could divide the contract into 2 different things. Whereas here, the construction contract, we're not going to be able to do that because if I do the, it's non-divisible, divisible. If I do the floor and then they have to bring someone in to do the next parts, it's like you can't, nothing got finished, there's still no finished project. The bathroom, one of the bathrooms is finished completely. The house, the construction, it's still under construction. So how would you actually recover? I'm talking about the person who does the services and then quits the job halfway through. The person who does the services and quits the job halfway through in the divisible contract will get paid for the work that he did already based on a theory of divisibility of contract. He'll get paid for 1 bathroom. On the construction contract, if I laid the foundation and then I was supposed to do all the rest of it, but I left and then someone had to come in, how could I get paid? Under what theory?
Unjust enrichment.
Yeah, some sort of
After estoppel, yeah.
Yeah, can recover on restitution, right? Like some value added, right? The value provided. But if we were doing this question, you would think about it. The person who breached was the person who didn't finish. So what does the other party have to do now? They have to finish the project, right? And that's how you measure the damages, which is how much were they going to pay you to do the project? How much did they end up paying the other people to do the project? And then you'll see if they end up paying the other people more, then sorry, you're not going to get anything in restitution because they're going to get money in expectation. You're only going to get in restitution if, they were able to finish the project for less money than you were going to get overall because the foundation you laid was valuable and the person who was able to come in and take over the job didn't have to do that work. Then you'll get paid in restitution, but only if the cost of it didn't exceed the total original cost. Okay. What are all the types of relief available in contract law?
I just reworded that because the way I wrote that did not make sense before.
Doesn't matter. I would say legal and equitable, right?
Yeah,
And
then like in that you have like the different kinds of damages and the different
yeah,
kinds.
I would say legal. This is how I would explain it. Legal can be compensatory or punitive. we don't really have punitive damages in contract law unless you do something really, 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 really bad, right? Like,
I think that's also like a tort, but like
Yeah.
there are some torts that are tested on this.
right, like intentional misrepresentation, fraud. If you're so fraudulent, like probably someone who got punitive damages for some of his contract violations, something like that could be fair enough. But usually you have compensatory. So when you have compensatory damages, what's the point of compensatory? The point of compensatory is to compensate, right? So you're gonna have punitive damages or compensatory, and then compensatory to compensate are usually gonna be expectation damages, which will put the non-breaching party in the position they would have been if the contract was performed. That's the easiest way of measuring damages in contract law. What I was gonna pay $10 and then you didn't do it, I had to go out and pay $12. Well, now my damages are $2, right? I had to pay $2 more in expectation. If it was foreseeable that now I had to, lost profits or incident, you can calculate that all in there. That's going to be how we measure expectation. So we also have consequential. Remember that consequential always has to accompany that word foreseeable. Those are like peanut butter and jelly. If it's consequential damages, it has to be foreseeable damages. Incidental, that's like recovering for the breach, maybe gas money there or something. Nominal, in name only, lost wages, lost profits. I would say restitution
Yeah,
is a form of legal relief because it's actually monetary. And then you're gonna have equitable relief in the form of injunction. Injunction, you will get more into this, and I guess, I don't know if it's common law or torture contract, but you gotta know about this. Injunction can either be a temporary restraining order or a permanent injunction, right?
yeah, that's Cipro.
Yeah, Cipro. Knew something on this test. And then injunction, you have the most common one, I think, is specific performance.
Yeah,
Specific performance is going to be land, unique goods, like art,
yeah,
right? That's when we're actually going to force them to do the thing. Like land is the number one. I wanted that $4 million mansion in West Palm. You got to deliver me that $4 million mansion, right? That's specific performance. We could also have reformation. They're going to reform the contract. There was one question I did with a bunch of students on the MBE in the past week, and every student got it wrong. And I thought it was an easy question, but it must not be. And it was said, in which one of these scenarios is reformation the appropriate remedy? And the first one was clerical error. They marked the property 2 acres past where it should be. And I was like, duh, that's the answer. Like, duh, right? Due to a clerical error, we're going to reform the contract. The other ones all said, A thought this, but B did not. Or buyer thought this, but seller did not. Buyer thought this, but seller did not. Buyer thought this and seller did not. And I kept saying to all 3 of these people, and if you're one of those 3 people, don't feel bad, you all got it wrong, that if there's a discrepancy, reformation is not an appropriate remedy. Reformation is an appropriate remedy when both parties are like, oh yeah, duh, like we meant this, like
yeah.
made the mistake. So
If
reformation,
there's a discrepancy, there's no meeting of the minds. So
right.
you have to rescind the contract.
Right, that leads us to rescission. Rescission is just tearing up the contract. We hate this contract sucks. What else? Quasi contract, which is a fictitious contract that brings in the thoughts of unjust enrichment, restitution, ill-gotten gains. Anything else for equitable relief? Some people argue that promissory estoppel is a form of equitable relief. I won't hate on it. What is a quasi contract? A fictitious contract.
Yeah, so it's implied in law, but I feel like no one ever knows what it is, so I just wanted to put it twice.
Yeah. what is an options contract, a requirement contract, and an output contract?
Yeah, does anyone know the differences and like what they are?
I would think that the options contract is what Serge was saying originally with common law. So that has to be supported by consideration. It cannot be held open for more than 3 months. And I think it has to be in writing and signed by the offerer.
So you're talking about the firm offer rule. We're just talking about generally an options contract.
Okay,
It's actually an option contract. Options is finance.
So this is like an option like in stock trading. If you guys
Yeah,
know this, like I'll sell this on a certain date for this much money.
isn't that like really risky or something like that? But anyway,
But
Yeah, we teach for the Series 766. We can teach you all about options and calls and puts and that, but we're going to stick to what just an option contract means here, which means you have the option to
Mhm.
accept it or not. It remains open, right?
Okay.
Let's do requirements contract.
I think that's where all of the inventory will be exclusively filled by one seller.
I like that. Exclusively filled by one seller. And then what's an output contract?
So the seller will sell exclusively to the buyer. Their entire inventory. Well, I don't think the word is inventory there, but I think it is inventory still, right?
I would
Yeah.
say production.
Okay.
so these are both about goods. I don't think you can have, as far as I understand, I don't think you can have an output contract for like services.
Gotcha.
Not really. All right, what about installment contract?
It happens periodically over time.
What are the unique rules of installment contract?
There's a right to cure.
Right, there's a right to cure a non-conforming shipment will not be a material breach. Unless the facts show otherwise, right? An example is the bread one. They deliver the bread every Monday because they bake it on Tuesday. So if you miss the shipment and you cure it on Wednesday, you didn't have a good opportunity to cure there, right? All right.
Yeah. Breaches have to be like, oh, you said that. Yeah, the material, like the breach can't just be like a breach to one shipment. It has to be like a breach that affects the entire like overall contract. I can't really think of a great example for that, but I can go back to that later.
All right, what about the firm offer rule? We talked about this a lot. This is what you're talking about. It's an option contract between merchants under the UCC. No consideration necessary unless stated in contract. Offer remains open for 90 days, at which point it becomes revocable.
Yeah, so you could have a question. Well, first of all, like they can make it for 80 days or 70 days or 2 days or whatever, but they can't make it 95 days. Like 90 is the maximum. And like you could have a question where you have a firm offer, but then like 4 months later, they decide to accept. That's fine. Like after 90 days, it's revocable. It's not revoked. So they like to test you on that.
Excellent. And just remember, everyone, after we finish this questionnaire, and again towards the end, we will take a break, and then we're gonna come back and do the UBE essays. All right. What are the implied covenants of goods? In every contract.
I understand what you mean.
Go
An
ahead.
implied covenant of the merchantability and what's the other one? Goods and fair dealing. Those two.
I said that in every contract for goods, there is a an implied warranty of merchantability and often fitness for a.
Of fitness for a particular purpose, yeah.
But here, this just means that parties are expected to operate in good faith and fairly. Like it means
Yeah,
what
so
it-
it's, yeah, like it's one thing. It's not like good faith and fair dealings. I think it's just one thing to just like be
Yeah.
reasonable and like to not take advantage of the other party.
right, and we just will recognize that in any situation, we're not going to take the side of the person who's not acting in good faith. All right, these are good questions. What are the difference between impossibility, impracticability, and frustration of purpose?
They're all very similar, so it's frustrating.
That's a good joke. Frustrating because frustration.
Oh,
When
What-
it's, when it's, oh, sorry, when it's impossible, it's no way to complete the contract. When it's impracticable, you still have to complete the contract. It will not be void just because you still have to figure it out. And then frustration of purpose. I always remember this by like the case, like when there's like a weather. I
Mhm.
don't remember the frustration of purpose one verbatim.
so all of these do void a contract.
Potentially.
Yeah, can potentially
Yeah.
void. So impossibility, like you rent a wedding venue, the venue explodes, there's no more venue, that would be impossible to contract. You rent a venue, all the roads to the venue are, the roads explode, so there's no way, it's almost impossible to get there, but it's not impossible, like you technically could get there. It would just be way more expensive. And like you can't really afford that, and it wouldn't be reasonable to expect you to still be in that venue. Frustration of purpose. Well, I don't know, like you rent out this building with a great view of the street because there's a parade and the parade's canceled. Like you could still rent out the building and like there's nothing stopping that, but like, you rented this building for the purpose of watching the street and the other party knew that.
Exactly. Excellent. I really like that. Impossibility. The only reason we said it, I was like, because I'm like, you're like, the wedding chapel was blown up. I'm like, well, you could get married outside. You know what I mean? But like, that's just me. That's just me going to law
A lot of
school.
people do get married outside, but they want
Right.
to get inside.
Right. What you're saying is true. Impossibility means there's no way it could be performed. It's just totally impossible. We can't do it. Impracticable always comes to mind.
Unreasonably difficult.
Yeah, when you see a rise in prices, like because the price of wheat has risen $8 per bushel, it would be impracticable. We're gonna end up losing money if we go through with the deal, right? Well, was it foreseeable? If it was foreseeable, then it's probably not a defense. If it was a totally unforeseeable, unreasonable, then impracticability might be a defense. And then frustration of purpose, yeah, it's like the parade, or maybe we were getting the two fighters together to declare the heavyweight champion of the world, but then another person from a third person got declared heavyweight champion, and this fight wouldn't even matter anymore. So we don't need to have the fight anymore because the purpose of why we were doing it has since been frustrated. Weather's a good one. Okay, parole evidence rule, and I gotta highlight double star, triple star this.
I don't think force majeure clauses are on this exam, right?
Well, let's just,
Yeah.
we like to be smarter than everyone. What is a force majeure clause, in case you see that? Because you can definitely see that language.
So like an act of force majeure is like if there's an act of God, which is like, oh, there's a storm, like that's not going to affect the contract or something like that.
Yeah, force majeure clauses are exactly. There's act of God that will make it so the contract doesn't exist. Okay, what is the parole evidence rule? Will not, outside evidence will not be admitted to contradict a fully integrated contract, right? That's the basic rule that we might have been, Matt and I might have said, hey, when Matt came to work for Ibis Prep, we might have talked about salary, we might have talked about his duties, we might have talked about it, but then we came down to a contract. And the premise of the parole evidence is, who cares what we talk about? We signed a contract. So we're going to look at the four corners of the contract to determine what is really going on here. right? But there's a lot of exceptions to the parole evidence rule, and especially on the MBE, I find that the parole evidence comes in, right? The parole evidence comes in because one of the exceptions applies. The exceptions are conditions to contract, right? That will work for me on the condition. Here's a better one. Someone out there wants to work for me. Brighton, you seem like a good, reasonable candidate. I'll hire you, Brighton, on the condition you pass the MBE, right? Or the UBE. That's a condition. And even if we have a contract all set up, but there was a condition that you had to pass in order to come work for me, well, we're going to bring that condition in because it's certainly admissible. So conditions. Another one would be a defect in formation. Like, hey, Brighton is going to work for me, but Brighton's bringing in evidence that I put a gun to his head and said, you better work for me. But like, that would be, we're going to bring that evidence in. That's outside evidence that, duress or fraud or any of those defects in formation, like reasons why the contract shouldn't exist. Clarify ambiguous term, or to show trade usage. I think that comes in a lot, right? Like the ambiguous term. When I said tutor, Matt had no idea that tutor, a bar prep student, also meant be their therapist when they have their inevitable mental breakdown, right? Well, we're going to look at the word tutor and we will look at the, the usage in the industry. And yeah, that's what a tutor means. It's not just a teacher. It's not a professor. It's a life coach. Okay. What are partially and fully integrated writings? Partially is not meant to include the totality of the agreement.
Yeah. And a fully integrated agreement is
usually has a clause, right?
Yeah, they generally have like I think it's called a complete, or not a merger. They have something clause. I'll look it up if anyone remembers. But that doesn't automatically make it fully integrated. It's just like one factor that they look at.
Complete.
It's an integration clause. Okay.
Integration clause in.
Yeah.
Different way. What are the conditions precedent and conditions subsequent? So conditions precedent is pretty easy. That's just like
Yeah.
pass bar to get job as tutor, right? That's precedent. What's conditions subsequent? This one's a little bit more difficult, right? Can someone give me an example of a subsequent condition?
Like if I'm able to get the loan requirements for the mortgage, then you can move this piano in.
Right.
That might still be a condition precedent.
All right. Well, Matt, why don't you
A condition subsequent would be like Tommy needs to pass this bar to get this job as a tutor. So you'll tutor me for 10 weeks until the July bar. Except in 2020, the July bar didn't happen because it was postponed. So that could be like the bar being postponed or being canceled could be or would be a condition subsequent. Like because
right.
Tutoring this person on the assumption that this bar exam is actually happening. If it's not happening, then your performance is probably no longer required.
Right. If something happens after the contract, it will nullify or it will relieve obligations. Right. Like we have this contract to work, but if Florida abolishes the MBE, which maybe they have done, then you won't have the obligation to tutor them anymore. Something that would happen afterwards that would relieve the obligation. That's fair enough. All right, anticipatory repudiation. So I kind of triple highlighted this parole evidence rule. Anticipatory repudiation all the time on essays, MBE, everything. When one party clearly and unequivocally demonstrates an intent not to honor the obligations of the contract. Right? That's anticipatory variation. Like, I'm not gonna do this. I'm not gonna show up tomorrow for work. I'm not gonna do what I think. When are you allowed to demand adequate assurances? What happens if they provide these assurances? What happens if they don't? And what are you allowed to do while waiting for an answer? So one thing is we talked about this with the merchants, the further assurances for merchants. It's written notice. And they have 30 days. Now, I've seen people, well, not seen, people have actually really asked me about this recently. How does it operate? Well, if you have reasonable doubt, that's important. You can send notice and they have 30 days to respond. Now, do they always have to respond? No, not if they didn't have reasonable notice. Like, if you messaged me and said, Andrew, you better send me notice right away that you're going to show up to teach. Like, I've never missed a session since 1989. Like, I'm always here. There's no reason to doubt that I'm going to be here, right? So that's unreasonable. I can totally ignore that email, right? Now, here's another thing. What if you say, if anyone did the essay with me this morning, it was pretty unequivocal when they said, I'm not going to do the shipment. And they called them and they didn't respond. Like, they send them a request for 30 assurances for assurances, but in the event that the request would be futile and time is of the essence and we need to act now to stop further damages from occurring, then you don't always have to wait the 30 days. So just kind of think about it like that. Like, 30 days is kind of like when there's, you hear substantial rumors and that they're reasonable, and then you ask them and then they should respond within 30 days. And then if they don't, you could assume that it's been breached. But there are other circumstances, extenuating circumstances, where it's like, clearly the breach has already occurred. Okay. Can someone tell me, not name that, assignment of what and delegation of what? You assign what and you delegate what?
You assign rights and you delegate duties.
Exactly. Assignment
Yeah.
rights, delegation of duties. Everyone know what that means?
And you can like delegation of duties, it's alliteration. That's how I remember it.
Alliteration. Assignment rights, delegation of duties. So most contracts are freely assignable unless they say no assignment. If they say no assignment, it means no assignment, no delegation. If it says no delegation, it just means no delegation. I really don't want to argue with any students about this today, but that's what I know. So anyway, assignment of rights, delegation of duties. Just because you assign or delegated, all three parties are still on the hook for the contract, let's say. Right? If I am the one who has to teach, I delegate that duty to Matt, right? Matt doesn't show up. This would never, ever happen. But Matt doesn't show up, right? I'm still on the hook for it, right? Because I was the original one. I delegated the duty. Matt didn't show up. You could sue me or Matt, right? Now, a novation is a complete substitution of the parties where I'm totally off the hook. You have to be able to distinguish between delegation and assignment, which are just adding a third party to take over duties or rights, versus a novation, which is a complete substitution of the parties, where now you have a new party completely, right? So what's an accord and satisfaction? Accord and satisfaction is kind of like a novation, but it's about a debt. So it's the payment of a greater debt with a smaller amount, usually, that acts as a cancellation of the debt. So the accord is the new agreement, and the satisfaction is the payment that satisfies the debt.
Yeah, so if you're in debt for 30,000 and you have like 3 more payments of 10,000 plus whatever interest rate there is, every year, you could instead say, would you take $23,000 right now to just settle the whole thing? And if they accept, that would be an accord and satisfaction.
Perfect. Legal relief versus equitable relief, I think we talked about.
Yeah.
Equitable.
Could anyone, do any of you guys know? I guess now that we've talked about it.
They don't know. Trust me, they know. Legal is monetary. And what was the sentence that we did in class today? Equitable relief follows the law or something? Was that what it was? It was some like really interesting statement, but it just meant that legal relief goes first. We try to recover with money. If you didn't know by now, I'm sorry to tell you, money actually makes the world go around, and money is the number one thing. Contracts is literally, it's about money, and money is what this is all about. People want money, give them money, and we're all good, usually. But if money's not going to make things good, then we're going to need specific performance. I wanted that Scooby-Doo mystery van, and no amount of money in the world will replace that.
There's only one, I think.
What's up?
There's only one in the world.
One Scooby-Doo mystery van?
I mean, maybe. I assume so.
Yeah, I assume so too. What are the different types of damages? Expectation, reliance, consequential. Okay, those are 3 of them. Punitive, liquidated, restitution, injunction, specific.
Yeah, I put those down there.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at them, but anything that we didn't say here, we said expectation, consequential, incidental, reliance, I like, restitution.
Yeah, so can any of you guys like talk about these? So for restitution, one important thing is that restitution is only for the breaching. Restitution is what the breaching party can sue for. Like if you're supposed to construct someone a house and instead you bring over like $20,000 of materials and then you decide, hey, actually I'm going to quit. They can sue you for breach of contract, but then you can counterclaim for restitution saying I left $20,000 of equipment at your house.
Yeah, restitution.
That was breached.
My favorite term is ill-gotten gains. When one party has been unjustifiably enriched, unjustly enriched. Okay, and then we talked about equitable relief being reformation. Well, those aren't really damages.
I really like to test on all of this stuff.
So nominal damages, that just means in name only, right?
Yeah.
Like you get $1. This happens all the time. Like, oh, British oil spill, you just killed everyone and we're blaming you and you have to pay $1 in fees. Like, but tisk, 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 that's what nominal means. Like, we're just going to let the world know that you lost, but you're not actually going to get in trouble. Punitive damages are to punish, and they're, like we said, rare in contract law, must be willful.
Yeah, it has to be like a tort associated with it.
Monster, right. Very bad. I said wonton, like wonton soup. Okay, what is liquidated damage clause? I know Shelby, if she's here, knows what this is. We talked about it in our class. Are you with us, Shelby? She might have her camera or video. Liquidated damages clauses are to contemplate damages ahead of time when they are too speculative to measure in the event of a breach.
Yeah.
They must be reasonable, right? You can't have liquidated damages at like 50% of the contract price or 80% of the contract price. And I know Shelby knows what that is. I didn't mean to put her on the spot. I'm just funny because we were talking about in our session. All right, what is restitution? Like we said, to restore ill-gotten gains. It's a proper remedy for quasi contract, or as Matt was saying, can be the remedy for the breaching party. Right? Like even though you breached, you still need to get something back.
Yeah. So even if like you think the contract, like if you're trying to go for this is a divisible contract, I already made 1 shed out of 2 sheds. If you fail, you can still sue for restitution.
All
Like,
right.
if they say no, it's not divisible, but you can still get restitution damages for the unjust enrichment.
For sure. All right. What about injunction versus specific performance? Can someone explain this to me?
Injunction is like a court order to stop something, like if there was some suit, I don't know, that two parties are bringing against each other, or one party was already doing, the court could order them to stop doing that.
Yeah,
Versus a specific performance is a court ordering like affirmatively to do something versus stopping something.
that was actually way better than I was going to explain it. They're literally the opposites. The injunction is a stop order. This specific performance is a go order. The injunction is WD-40. No, sorry. This specific performance is WD-40. The injunction is duct tape, right? We're going to stop with the injunction. We're going to make them do something with the specific performance. We're going to force them to sell you the car. We're going to force them to do the goods. Can you force someone to perform? Can you force me to tutor? If I get out of bed and say I don't want to tutor, can you force me? No, that's too close to indentured servitude. But we can force them to sell the land or force them to deliver the piece of art.
Yeah, so like if someone says, no, I'm not going to sing on these nights that I said I would sing, you can't force them to sing, but you can move for an injunction to prevent them from singing for anyone else at the same time.
That just happened to that country artist. Last night, I let the liquor. I just read this article that he heard his vocal cords, right? And so you can't force him to sing. Yeah. All right. What are the different types of warranties actually warrant? Express warranty. Exactly what it says, right?
I think it's like the picture on the box of the television.
Yeah, the picture on the box. Merchantability means it's not defective, right?
Yeah, so if it's a TV, we'll just stick with TV. If it's a TV that it'll go on, that it'll have volume up and down. You can change the channel. And then fitness for a particular purpose has to be something like specific. Like there's no inherent fitness for a particular purpose warranty, but you have to ask, like, does this TV does it come with, Hulu included? And they say, yes, it does. Like, that's not part of merchantability. Like, most people assume that Hulu is an add-on. But if the salesman says, yes, this explicitly comes with, Sunday Red Zone package, and it doesn't, then that violates a fitness for a particular purpose.
A warranty can be displayed expressly or implicitly, right?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Now we get to the harsh question.
I think that has to be like disclaimed in writing clearly.
Mm-hmm. What are third-party beneficiaries? We've got intended and incidental. What's an intended beneficiary?
The contract or the thing specify them in it.
Yeah.
Either explicitly named or identifiable, right? To anyone who sells you a car, right? And then someone sells you the car, that person was intended. Incidental is just a third party who benefits from a contract, but was not specifically contemplated or specified in the contract.
Yeah, so if you contract to have a pool built in your backyard, presumably like your neighbors who will be invited to swim in the pool are going to benefit, but they're not the intended beneficiaries, they're just incidental beneficiaries.
Right. Like your neighbor can't sue your pool builder because he wants to swim in your pool. And you know what I mean? Like I am building a pool for the summertime because I'm going to have barbecue parties all summer. And my neighbor can't wait to party. And then you, the builder, you mess up the contract. My neighbor can say, hey, I'm supposed to be swimming in your pool by now, like, and sue the builder of the pool because he's an incidental, right? Intended beneficiaries have to be like the father who is getting paid by the two brothers every month, $50, and he's getting paid. And once your rights vest, you've materially relied, or you've sued, or you've assented to the contract, then you can step into the shoes and enforce the contract as either any party would, right? So your rights vest and mean like they can't be taken away once you materially rely, assent, or you sue on the contract. All right, what is tortious interference with the contract? Oh man, I deal with this all the time. When,
Oh, yeah, does anyone know, or at least like any of the elements of it? A lot of them are kind of like intuitive. And
Did you mean like you deal with it all the time because you have students that are like in Ibis, and then you may have like bar representatives from like Barbary and Themis trying to get after your students when they know they're with Ibis?
and then they're like, oh, Ibis Prep. Like, yeah, you sure you don't want to go with this monster corporation that's owned by some monster who lives in a monster hill on top of no, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I deal with that. I would never tell anyone not to deal with another bar prep company. I think that is clear tortious interference, but what do I know? Okay, so anyway, this is a really incredible way that we just spent the first part of class. We went through this entire questionnaire.
There's a lot.
There's a lot. We'll create a copy of this. People as they turn it in, we'll make the best one available to everyone. Is there any questions at all that anyone has from this questionnaire? We're going to take a 15-minute break and then come back and do UBE essays. So for those of you who are just here for the federal review, or for those of you who just came, for the first part and the substantive part, any questions about anything at all about contracts? You have Matt, Boy Genius, here with us. Any questions at all about anything related to contracts? The floor is wide open. All right. I mean, don't be scared. Okay. Well, you have a question, Barbara? No.
Oh, no, sorry, I was just moving my hand.
Yeah, let me think. Any questions I have about contracts? What's the hardest things I see in contracts? I think it's a lot of times with debts. Like, just remember that just because a debt is barred by the statute of frauds doesn't mean it can't be enforced. It could still be enforced even if it's barred by the statute of frauds. There's one question that I never will understand about, and I made a joke about it earlier this morning. It's about gargoyles and a no oral modification clause. That to me is about as hard as contract gets. No oral modification clauses. But ultimately, what's up?
Gargoyles was the subject. It's not like.
No, yeah, the MBE question was just about gargoyles, and then it said like, it was just a crazy question. But just in general, I think third-party beneficiaries might be tough. I think lack of consideration, prior consideration, these can all be tough. But contracts, just practice. Be confident, and you'll do fine. We're gonna take a 15-minute break right now, and then at 6 o'clock we'll come back and we'll do essays. Where we're gonna go over UBE essays.